had previously taken an SSRI while in nursing school with no side effects, correct?
Correct.
Did she also report that she had no history of any kind of abuse that had occurred to her at any point in her life?
Correct.
What did she report in regards to alcohol consumption?
I believe she reported 1 to 2 drinks at a time, and possibly up to 5 times a week.
And is there a portion when the patient fills that in, how much they drink? Is there a question there about whether they feel guilty about that?
Yes.
And what was her response?
Am I allowed to go check that just to make sure?
Is there an objection to her reviewing the records?
Yes. She indicated yes.
And so in that section, is it correct that she listed that she was drinking 5 times per week and feeling guilty at that time about it?
Yes.
And did she list her height as 5'6" in those documents?
To some of the questions, yes.
And is that significant to you based on your training and experience?
You have to look at this form within the entire picture of the patient. So no, I didn't suspect that Lindsay had ADHD.
So these forms are a tool, and you use them together along with your observations of the patient to come to conclusions. Is that correct?
Yes.
There was also I believe it's entitled a GAD screening. Is that generalized anxiety disorder?
Yes.
Okay, and did Ms. Clancy fill that out as well? Page 27.
Sorry, my pages are a little bit different than yours.
Oh, I apologize.
I'll find it. Okay.
Ms. Clancy's answers to these questions, did they give you cause for concern based on your training and experience?
They were highly suggestive of anxiety and an anxiety disorder.
And for example, number 1, feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge, she responded nearly every day, correct?
Correct.
Not being able to stop or control worrying, she answered nearly every day,
and
correct?
Euphoric. Yes, I might leave it there and then follow up with some of the other symptoms.
Did any of the questions you asked Ms. Clancy related to mania or manic episodes, did any of her answers to those questions indicate that she had experienced mania or manic episodes?
No.
Now, in that first meeting, what's your exam process? Like, how do you start the meeting and how does it flow?
Sure. So I start the meeting by introducing myself, explaining what we're going to be doing for the day. Then I ask the patient why they're there. We talk about why they're there. I assess for different mood symptoms, anxiety symptoms, psychosis symptoms, mania symptoms, safety concerns. Then we start talking about the history. We start talking about the past psychiatric history, the past medical history, substance use. We start talking about other medicines that they have tried in the past or may still be taking. And it's not always in that order, but that's the general order. Sometimes things come up sooner.
Before we get into this testimony, pay close attention to what the doctor says about Lindsay Clancy's condition when she first entered treatment. This courtroom is about to walk through an enormous amount of medical documentation, intake forms, psychiatric history, anxiety and depression screenings, suicide risk questions, substance use assessments, and the doctor's own observations. And the important question isn't simply whether Lindsay reported struggling emotionally. The records clearly show that she did report symptoms including anxiety attacks, depressed mood, excessive worry, guilt, difficulty sleeping, racing thoughts, and difficulty experiencing pleasure. The real issue is what those symptoms meant clinically at the time, and what the doctor could reasonably identify during that initial evaluation. The testimony also draws a sharp distinction between symptoms that may require further assessment and symptoms that indicate something more severe, such as psychosis or mania. As you listen, notice the repeated answers. No suicidal intent, no homicidal intent, no hallucinations, and no reported manic episodes. But at the same time, the doctor acknowledges that some of Lindsay's screening responses were concerning for anxiety and possible depression. So how do all of these pieces fit together? Was the initial evaluation enough to identify what was really happening? Or were there warning signs that only became meaningful later? That distinction is going to matter as this testimony continues. And listen carefully, because the defense and prosecution are clearly focusing on what was documented and what was not.
Do you recall when you first saw Lindsay Clancy as a patient?
Yes,
When was that?
it was in September of 2022.
And was that first appointment on September 15th, 2022?
I believe that it was.
And prior to a patient coming in for their first appointment, is there paperwork that they fill out, either online or that's provided to them to fill out?
Yes.
And what type of paperwork is that?
It's fairly extensive. It includes past health history, past psychiatric history, medications they have taken in the past. It includes names of any therapists or other doctors they work with, usually primary care. It includes any report of substances that they may use or may have used in the past. It includes a number of scales, so scales assessing things like anxiety, depression, ADHD. So it's a fairly lengthy document.
Are you aware that Lindsay Clancy filled out those documents on September 12th, 2022, 3 days prior to her first appointment?
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to review what Lindsay filled out prior to meeting with her for that first appointment?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall what you learned from those documents about her prior mental health treatment?
Yes.
What was that?
That she had previously taken some medication. I believe it was in nursing school. It may have been fairly brief, but she had tried the medication Prozac.
Do you recall that she also listed that she had tried Wellbutrin as well while she was on the Prozac?
That was listed as well.
Okay. And do you recall that when she listed that she took the Prozac and the Wellbutrin while in nursing school, she listed that she had no side effects from those medications?
That is correct.
Prozac, is that an SSRI?
Yes.
Okay. So Lindsay reported that she had previously taken an SSRI while in nursing school with no side effects, correct?
Correct.
Did she also report that she had no history of any kind of abuse that had occurred to her at any point in her life?
Correct.
What did she report in regards to alcohol consumption?
I believe she reported 1 to 2 drinks at a time, and possibly up to 5 times a week.
And is there a portion when the patient fills that in, how much they drink? Is there a question there about whether they feel guilty about that?
Yes.
And what was her response?
Am I allowed to go check that just to make sure?
Is there an objection to her reviewing the records?
Yes.
This is one of the most important sections so far because the testimony is establishing what the clinician actually had in front of her during the initial evaluation. The suicide risk questionnaire, according to this testimony, produced no answers across the listed questions, including questions about wanting to die, having a suicide plan, previous attempts, self-harm, hearing voices telling her to hurt herself, and thoughts of seriously hurting someone else. That does not mean the patient had no mental health symptoms whatsoever. In fact, the earlier testimony identified significant anxiety and depressive symptoms. But legally and clinically, those are different questions. A screening form is one piece of an evaluation, not a crystal ball predicting everything that might happen later. And notice how the questioning keeps returning to the records. The attorney appears focused on creating a documented snapshot of September 2022. What Lindsay reported, what she denied, and what the clinician could observe at that time. The big question for viewers is this: when evaluating someone's condition, should later events change how we interpret an earlier assessment, or should that earlier assessment be judged based on the information available then?
She indicated yes.
And so in that section, is it correct that she listed that she was drinking 5 times per week and feeling guilty at that time about it?
Yes.
And did she list her height as 5'6" in those documents? I believe on the same page, page 20.
Yes.
Now, did those that initial survey or questionnaire that she filled out get into what symptoms she was experiencing at the time?
Yes.
And what symptoms did she report experiencing at that time?
Anxiety attacks, decreased appetite, depressed mood, easily distracted, excessive worry, guilt, unable to feel pleasure, unable to fall asleep, and racing thoughts.
And would it be fair to say that there's a checklist of symptoms and the patient checks off which ones they're experiencing, correct?
Yes.
And so on that list, engage in risky behaviors, that was not checked off, correct?
Correct.
And excessive energy wasn't checked off, correct?
Correct.
Feelings of hopelessness, feelings of abandonment, feelings of emptiness, none of those were checked off, correct?
Correct.
Impulsive behavior, that was not checked off, correct?
Correct.
Now, was there also a suicide risk assessment form that Ms. Clancy filled out?
Yes.
And what is a suicide risk assessment?
Well, it assesses various factors that may increase a person's risk of committing suicide.
And the form that Ms. Clancy filled out, the first question is, have you been so distressed you seriously wish to end your life? And her response was no, correct?
I'm just looking.
Page 23.
Correct.
And the second question is, has anything happened recently to make you feel you don't want to live? And her answer was no, correct?
Correct.
There's question 3, a specific plan. Do you have a specific plan of how you would kill yourself? And her answer was no, correct?
Correct.
Fourth question is access to weapons or means of hurting yourself, and the answer is no, correct?
Correct.
The fifth question is made a serious suicide attempt, and the answer was no, correct?
Correct.
The sixth question, purposely done something to hurt yourself. Again, no, correct?
Correct.
Seventh question, heard voices telling you to hurt yourself. Her answer was no, correct?
Correct.
Number 9, having thoughts of killing or seriously hurting someone else. The answer was no, correct?
Correct.
Number 10, heard voices telling you to hurt others. The answer was no, correct?
Correct.
Hurt someone or destroyed property on purpose. The answer was no, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the answers to every question on this suicide checklist was no, correct?
Correct.
Now we get to another distinction that is easy to miss if you're just listening casually. The GAD screening was described as highly suggestive of anxiety and an anxiety disorder, with several answers indicating symptoms occurring nearly every day. Then the questioning moves into the PHQ-9, which is a depression screening tool. The witness explains that some answers were positive, but then immediately clarifies what that means. Not positive in the sense of good news, but positive in the sense that the response indicates a symptom that may require further assessment. That clarification is important because these questionnaires are screening instruments. They help identify areas that deserve clinical attention. They don't automatically establish a complete diagnosis by themselves. And that appears to be exactly why the attorney is spending so much time walking through individual answers. The testimony is building a paper trail showing that anxiety and possible depression were present, while other areas, including ADHD, suicidality, psychosis, and mania, were not identified as significant concerns during this stage of the evaluation. What do you make of that distinction? Is a concerning screening result enough to demand more investigation, or does the clinician's broader evaluation determine the significance?
Was there also a substance use assessment form that was filled out on page 24?
Yes.
And there were no issues with substance use, correct?
Correct.
Is there also an ADHD self-report scale that's filled out?
There usually is.
Direct you to page 25.
Okay.
And ADHD, is that attention deficit hyperactive disorder?
Yes.
Okay. And given the answers that Ms. Clancy gave on that self-reporting form, were there any concerns about attention deficit hyperactive disorder?
Not significantly.
Were there any concerns at all?
Well, she reported often to some of the questions. Yes.
And is that significant to you based on your training and experience?
You have to look at this form within the entire picture of the patient. So no, I didn't suspect that Lindsay had ADHD.
So these forms are a tool, and you use them together along with your observations of the patient to come to conclusions. Is that correct?
Yes.
There was also I believe it's entitled a GAD screening. Is that generalized anxiety disorder?
Yes.
Okay, and did Ms. Clancy fill that out as well?
Mm-hmm.
Page 27.
Sorry, my pages are a little bit different than yours.
Oh, I apologize.
I'll find it. Okay.
Ms. Clancy's answers to these questions, did they give you cause for concern based on your training and experience?
They were highly suggestive of anxiety and an anxiety disorder.
And for example, number 1, feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge, she responded nearly every day, correct?
Correct.
Not being able to stop or control worrying, she answered nearly every day, correct?
Yes.
And so several of these questions were either nearly every day or several days, correct?
Yes.
I apologize. Can I just ask what page that is?
27, I'm sorry. And then is there also a patient questionnaire that the patient fills out? I think it's...
yes, I believe so. Yes.
And what is the purpose of this patient questionnaire?
I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring to. It might be the one that asks about things like whether the symptoms affect their daily living, what their history is. Is that what you're looking at?
It's entitled Tools-PHQ-9 Patient Questionnaire. And the date is 9/12.
Maybe you want to go over and show her.
Are you able to? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Here is another piece that matters. The doctor is explaining that the intake paperwork was not some completely separate process from the actual clinical assessment. The forms were completed beforehand, and the information was incorporated into the intake note, alongside what the doctor observed and what she asked during the appointment. That means the evaluation had multiple components: self-reported information, screening results, direct questioning, and clinical observation. The testimony also establishes that the first appointment was conducted through telehealth, with both the patient and provider having a role in whether the appointment was virtual or in person. That detail may sound procedural, but in a courtroom, seemingly small procedural facts can become important when someone is trying to understand exactly how an evaluation happened. And now the questioning is moving from paperwork to direct clinical questions. The doctor is being asked whether she specifically asked about suicidal intent, homicidal intent, hallucinations, and symptoms of mania. According to her testimony, Lindsay denied those issues. So now we're moving from what the form said to what the doctor says she personally assessed. That is a major transition in this testimony.
So this form that's entitled PHQ-9 Patient Questionnaire, what is the purpose of that form?
It's a screening tool for depression.
Okay. And can you talk about the defendant's answers to those questions and what they told you based on your training and experience?
Well, some of the answers were positive, so that really indicates that she should be assessed for depression. She might have it.
Okay. And when you say positive, what do you mean by positive?
So, for example, she said for number 2, feeling down, depressed, and hopeless more than half of the days, a positive response means indicating yes.
So it's not a positive, happy response. It's a positive, this might be an issue response.
Yes.
And the next form, A1, initial diagnostic assessment.
Yes.
There is a place there, again, well, this is for September 15th, the day you actually met her, correct?
Yes.
So the patient fills out the forms in advance of meeting with you. Do they then again fill out the forms when they meet with you?
No, these are the same forms.
Same forms, just the different date on them?
Yes, because they're included in the intake note, which is what I write, but some of the information is from the patient's self-report.
Okay. So would it be a combination of the forms they fill out and then what you observe and ask about during your initial meeting?
Yes.
And that initial meeting with Ms. Clancy, was that in person or was that a telehealth?
Telehealth.
Okay. Does who controls whether it's an in-person meeting or a telehealth? You or the patient?
Both.
Both. And if a patient told you, I don't want to do telehealth, I only want to do in person, is that an option?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'll let that stand.
And
This is where the testimony becomes especially significant because the doctor is describing the difference between simply asking a patient questions and conducting a broader psychiatric assessment. She says some signs can be assessed through observation, not just through direct questions. For mania, she describes questions involving periods of excessive energy or euphoria and says she would follow up on other symptoms. The witness then gives a direct answer. Based on the questions asked, Lindsay's responses did not indicate that she had experienced mania or manic episodes. That matters because the testimony is now narrowing the clinical picture. We have documented anxiety symptoms. We have some depressive symptoms that warranted further assessment. But the doctor says she did not identify evidence of mania. And earlier, the doctor also testified that the screening did not lead her to suspect ADHD. The courtroom is essentially examining each potential explanation one at a time. This is why listening to the sequence matters. The testimony isn't simply saying, everything was fine. It is much more nuanced. Certain symptoms were present, while other serious indicators were reportedly absent. The next section gets even deeper because the doctor is about to explain how the entire mental status evaluation was conducted.
And can you just tell us when you met with Ms. Clancy on that first day, did you ask her questions such as, do you have suicidal intent?
Yes.
What was her response?
That she did not.
Did you ask her if she had homicidal intent?
Yes.
What was her response?
That she did not.
Did you ask her if she was experiencing any auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations?
Yes.
What was her response?
She did not.
Did you ask her questions to determine if she was experiencing any symptoms of mania?
Yes.
What types of questions you asked to determine that?
Well, a lot of it can be assessed without asking, but questions may look like, have you ever had a period of time in your life where you were excessively energetic and euphoric? I might leave it there and then follow up with some of the other symptoms.
Did any of the questions you asked Ms. Clancy related to mania or manic episodes, did any of her answers to those questions indicate that she had experienced mania or manic episodes?
No.
Now listen closely to how broad this examination actually was. The doctor describes assessing mood, anxiety, psychosis, mania, safety concerns, psychiatric history, medical history, substance use, medications, and the patient's goals. In other words, the evaluation wasn't based on one questionnaire or one answer. The testimony portrays it as a combination of several sources of information. Then the focus turns specifically to psychosis. The doctor explains that she looks at appearance, attitude, agitation, cooperation, speech, mood, thought process, and thought content. She is looking for things like disorganized thinking, unusual or paranoid beliefs, changes in speech, and other behavioral indicators that could raise concern. That is important because the witness later gives a very clear answer regarding Lindsay. She did not observe signs or symptoms of psychosis during that initial meeting. Again, this testimony is about what the clinician observed and documented at that particular point in time. It does not automatically answer every question about what happened later. But it does give the jury a framework for understanding what the doctor says she evaluated. And the next exchange is going to test whether the assessment went beyond what could be seen on the screen.
Now, in that first meeting, what's your exam process? Like, how do you start the meeting and how does it flow?
Sure. So I start the meeting by introducing myself, explaining what we're going to be doing for the day. Then I ask the patient why they're there. We talk about why they're there. I assess for different mood symptoms, anxiety symptoms, psychosis symptoms, mania symptoms, safety concerns. Then we start talking about the history. We start talking about the past psychiatric history, the past medical history, substance use. We start talking about other medicines that they have tried in the past or may still be taking. And it's not always in that order, but that's the general order. Sometimes things come up sooner. And we talk a bit about what the patient's goals are, what they're looking for in this time period, and then I may give some of my recommendations.
And did you follow that process for that initial meeting with Lindsay Clancy?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that you part of the initial evaluation is looking for signs of psychosis. Is that correct?
Yes.
What types of things are you looking for to see if someone's experiencing psychosis?
So
and that brings us to a crucial point in the testimony. The doctor has now explained that psychosis was evaluated through both observation and questions about past experiences. She says she assessed the patient's appearance, behavior, speech, mood, thought process, and thought content, while also asking about experiences such as hearing voices or seeing things other people did not see. When asked whether she identified signs or symptoms of psychosis during that initial appointment, her answer was no. And when asked about those past experiences, She says Lindsay's response was also no. From a courtroom perspective, this creates a very specific evidentiary picture. The witness is describing what she says she saw, what she asked, and what she was told during the September 2022 evaluation. Viewers should be careful not to turn that into a broader conclusion than the testimony supports. A negative finding at one point in time does not necessarily prove that a condition could never develop later. But it does explain why the clinician says she did not identify psychosis during this particular evaluation. So the bigger question becomes, what conclusions can fairly be drawn from an assessment based on the information available at that moment?
So there are a number of things. They start with how the patient appears. So some signs of psychosis might be that they appear disheveled. I assess what their attitude is, if they might be agitated or very uncooperative. That's a red flag. I will assess what their speech is like. Is it very loud? Is it very fast? Or sometimes it could be the opposite, where they're not really even speaking at all. I assess what their mood is like, what they're saying that they're feeling, and how they appear visually. I assess what their thoughts are like. So are their thoughts disorganized, where it's really hard to understand? They're jumping around and you can't follow their line of thought. I assess what the thought content is. If it's particularly about anything very bizarre or very paranoid, that would be potentially indicative of psychosis.
And you conducted that type of evaluation on Lindsay Clancy in that first meeting, is that correct?
Yes, that assessment is done with every patient.
And did you note any signs or symptoms of psychosis with Ms. Clancy that day?
No.
Do you also, in addition to the observations you're making of the patient that day, are you also asking questions about their past behavior and things that have happened to them in the past that might indicate whether psychosis is an issue?
Yes.
And what types of things are you asking them about their past?
Well, I may ask, have you ever heard voices? Have you ever seen something that other people didn't see?
And did you ask those questions of Ms. Clancy?
I believe I did.
Stepping back for a moment, this entire examination has been building a timeline from the ground up. First came the intake documents and prior treatment history. Then came alcohol use information and reported symptoms of anxiety and depression. After that, the questioning went through suicide risk screening, substance use screening, ADHD screening, generalized anxiety, and the PHQ-9 depression questionnaire. The doctor then described the actual clinical interview, including questions about suicidal and homicidal intent, hallucinations, mania, and psychosis. The pattern in the testimony is striking. There were documented symptoms that suggested anxiety and possible depression, but the doctor says the evaluation did not reveal suicidal intent, homicidal intent, hallucinations, mania, or psychosis. That distinction is going to be central to understanding the testimony fairly. It is also worth remembering that this is one witness explaining one stage of the case. The courtroom may eventually consider other evidence, other witnesses, later events, and arguments from both sides. For now, however, the testimony is focused on what this clinician knew and what she observed at the beginning of treatment. What do you think carries more weight here? The patient's written screening answers, the doctor's direct observations, or the combination of both? That is the tension running through this entire examination.
Did you ask those questions of Ms. Clancy?
I believe I did.
And what was her response?
No.
So, based strictly on the testimony presented here, the doctor described an initial psychiatric evaluation that relied on several sources of information rather than a single questionnaire. Lindsay's intake paperwork showed prior use of Prozac and Wellbutrin, reported alcohol consumption, and multiple symptoms involving anxiety and depression. The suicide risk questionnaire, as described by the witness, contained negative answers to the listed risk questions. The ADHD screening did not lead the doctor to suspect ADHD, while the GAD screening was described as highly suggestive of anxiety, and the PHQ-9 contained responses indicating that depression should be assessed further. During the actual appointment, The doctor testified that Lindsay denied suicidal and homicidal intent and denied hallucinations, while her answers did not indicate mania. The doctor also testified that she did not observe signs of psychosis during that initial evaluation. The key takeaway is that the testimony presents a complicated clinical picture rather than a simple everything was fine or everything was obvious narrative. Some symptoms were documented, while other serious indicators were reportedly absent at that time. Any final legal conclusions must come from the complete evidence and the court's ultimate findings, not from one isolated exchange. If you found this case as shocking as we did, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping courtroom breakdowns.